So here's a quick tutorial on how to use in-text citations, which is something that you should be using if you're writing an essay that has multiple sources and you're including evidence from the sources. So let's take a look here. Let's say if we are using this source here from Popular Mechanics. Okay, so we're doing the Gatling gun. Let's open this up. Now let's say that in this article, I want to use a piece of evidence from here. And I can choose to either paraphrase it or I can quote it either way. So let's say, where is it in here? Because I'm looking for things that made society better, things that made it worse. So Gatling said about inventing a labor-saving device for warfare that he hoped would minimize the number of men needed to fight a war and thus minimize the number of men exposed to its horrors. So let's say if I wanted to quote this, I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And then I'm going to put it right down here for the time being. Now, being that it's coming from a source and I took it exactly as it is, I'm going to go ahead and put quotation marks around it. Now, I need to say which source it came from though, right? Because there's a couple of different sources on the Gatling gun. So I'm going to explore this and say, okay, do I have an author? In this case, yes, Matthew Moss is my author, okay? So that's the information that I would use. So as I said, Matthew Moss is our author. If we didn't have an author, though, what would we do? We would have to take part of the title of the web page, which is right here. Or we'd take the full title in this case, because it kind of makes sense altogether. But if you have a super long title, like let's say if this whole thing here was the title, then I would probably just take the first part of it, because that's all you'd really need. You just need enough so that your reader can make sense of where the information came from. So anyway, Matthew Moss, let's go back and let's take a look here. So here's what that would look like. I've got my quote right down here, right? Gatling said about inventing a labor-saving device for warfare that he hoped would minimize the number of men needed to fight a war and thus minimize the number of men exposed to his horrors. Okay, well, he was grossly mistaken. But anyway, this comes from Matthew Moss. I'm just going to use his last name. Now, if it were a printed source and I had page numbers in front of me, like let's say if this thing came from page 25 through 27 of the magazine that's printed in front of me, then great. But it doesn't. It's a website, so there's no page. So now I have two options. One is I can put NP for no page, or I can put nothing at all and just do it like that. So here's the deal that all students seem to forget every time I show them this. Period goes at the end. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Here are the rules, just to go over it for using in-text citations, just to remind you. Look for an author of the source. If there's no author, use the title. Okay? After using any piece of evidence from the source, paraphrased or quoted, you must use an in-text citation. Must. Okay? Directly after including the quoted or paraphrased evidence in your essay, open your parentheses, type in your author's name, type in the page number if there is one, then close the parentheses. Period goes at the very end. Again, no author. Shorten the title of the web page or article, and then use that instead. Every time you use detailed or specific information from a source, you must include an in-text citation. Okay? Unless you're using footnotes or doing something else. Well, that's a whole other story. We won't get into that. Alrighty, but that is the basic gist of how you use in-text citations to give credit to a source. Isn't that nicer than always having to say, according to Matthew, Moss, blah, la, 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 right? Isn't that annoying? So this just gives you another option for how to give credit to a source. All right, bye-bye.